what I was thinking, especially, 2 years ago when the market was starting to pop off, like the last thing I wanted to do was quit my jobs because that's just giving me more money to put into it,
Yeah.
right? It makes no sense. Like if you're just leaving food on the table. So altogether, man, I don't think that I don't think that being a software developer will hurt you or being IT in any way, shape, or form, especially with crypto. It's only going to benefit you. And if you can just take that same logical thinking over into your investments, then the more the merrier.
We're going to be talking about thriving in any market here as a fitting theme because everything seems to be catching on fire nowadays. I'm joined here with Tech Chief Josh. He runs Developer Direction. A lot of you guys probably know him. He's been on the channel a few times before. But yeah, there's no better time than right now to talk about this topic, I really feel like, because, obviously with crypto, at the state that it's had, and not even just crypto, right? But pretty much all markets. I mean, real estate, they got the interest rate hikes. The stock market's just been getting destroyed this year as well, compared to the swings that they're used to seeing. And, everything just seems to be in a really tough spot right now. So, I mean, I'm of the opinion, and maybe, correct me if you feel differently, but I just feel that investing by itself is not enough right now in these times, right? It's like, because you never want to rely on hope as a strategy. And where do you see like the value of a hard skill being right now with everything going on?
I double down on the whole hope is not a strategy thing, right? It's not, because like you can't just like, okay, some people do end up getting lucky enough to like throw $100 on a poo coin and end up, getting a couple $1 million out of it. And let's just say you do end up getting one, two, three, $4 million out of that. How long is that going to last you? Especially, considering taking inflation into consideration. But yeah, man, I mean, I never stopped working, right? Even if with all the different investing venues that I've been in and out of throughout the last couple of years, like you can't just not work. It doesn't work like that. And I think people have come to realize that with the craziness lately. And if you do have a hard skill, at least one thing we know about that, and regardless of what the hard skill is, right? Like people don't have to go and do the stuff that you and me do. They don't have to be in cybersecurity. They don't have to be a software engineer. They don't even have to have like any IT related job. Like anything, even a plumber, a literal plumber, up until the point where people no longer are going to be pooping anymore, right? then maybe that kind of hard skill won't be valuable. But until robots come and replace all of us, hard skills are going to be the only thing that's ever going to make you bulletproof.
Yeah, for sure. And just to clarify for everyone watching here, when we say hard skill, we mean any kind of skill set that you have that you can bring to the marketplace to exchange for compensation, right? So if you were like one of the people that, I know there was a lot of people in our community, right, that were like full-time crypto, right? They were so big into crypto, and the reason they were able to do that for a while is that the markets were going pretty well. And if you predicted right, you could just keep on getting really big gains like through the altcoins and stuff like that. I just looked at, I haven't, to be honest with you, I haven't really checked the prices too much except for the other day. And I was like, wow, I can't believe like that literally a lot of the altcoins like actually went to zero pretty much. For all intents and purposes, yeah. like Kusama, I remember when that was like $500 something. I think it was like $50, and then
I think Kusama went all the way to 600, right?
Yeah. Oh, you're right. Yeah, it did go above 600. Yeah. But yeah, we're just talking about like massive pullbacks on this, and yeah, like Josh said, it doesn't matter what it is. That being said, I think that certain skill sets, like plumbing, like you mentioned as well, that was a good point. But there are definitely certain skill sets, certain hard skill sets that are they're more hardened to this type of stuff than other areas. So with that being said, I'm pretty sure that you would definitely stand by software development being one of those skills that is very strong in this situation. What would you say makes it such a attractive option in situations like these?
I think that's easy, man. Like, so what are we using right now to communicate and to record this and to talk? software. Right? We're using computer, right? But what runs on computers? Software. And no matter what job, no matter what industry you're in, even if you literally work as a garbage truck driver, they have to go and log their hours in on a computer somewhere, right? Everybody's using computer. This phone, everybody uses a phone, and which is also a computer for people who didn't know. And everything that is a computer requires software, and therefore, pretty much every single industry, every single person on the planet needs software. They either need it fixed, they need it updated, or maintained. And that, no matter what happens, unless we have like a giant EMP and power gets shut off forever and just happens to never come back on, which I don't know. I mean, you have to show me some kind of like pretty convincing evidence that that's the case, because I don't mean to go off topic here, but as someone who lived through Hurricane Katrina and had we didn't have power grids for like 8 months. I mean, everyone had generators, gas power generators. We had batteries. People found ways to get electricity eventually, right? So until that doesn't happen, this skill is always going to be one of those skills that you need it to maintain the current standard of living in the 21st century. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in the event of the EMP burst, like taking out the entire planet's electricity or like all the electronic devices, we're both pretty screwed. I gotta say, there's no future in programming or cybersecurity in that case. But aside from that, yeah, like you said, there's really no way that this is not a valuable skill set to have. I mean, even if, speaking on the side of cybersecurity, even if you go back to before a lot of this technology, like back in World War II, there was still hacking going on. If you think about, if you ever seen, heard the story on how like the British cracked the encryption codes on like the Germans' messages, right? That's basically hacking, right? They found a way to break their encryption algorithm. So this stuff was going on even when it was all analog electronics. So I definitely just cannot see in any time frame that I could even imagine that this would not be, very prevalent, right? Because I do want to ask you though, because a lot of times, you hear new technology come out and like a lot of people get super hype on it and they're like, oh, this is going to end all of, the world as you know it. And one of the big things that people were really buzzing about was the GitHub Copilot. And I heard some people go as far as to say like, yeah, programmers won't be relevant anymore. Eventually, once the AI gets so good, we'll never write code anymore. What do you think about that?
I was actually fortunate enough to be on the first 100,000 devs for the waitlist to use it. Dude, I don't even use it. I don't. Okay, so here's GitHub Copilot is great if you want to be able to have auto templated function shells and boilerplate shell code done for you, which people are already doing by just going to
on
a
Stack
repository.
Overflow.
Yeah.
What's the solution to this? Some ridiculous regex that's unnecessary, copy paste. We're good to go.
Yeah. So all the stuff that no one's going to memorize. And
they should make a Stack Overflow Copilot where it just Googles on Stack Overflow and just copy paste the code for you.
Yeah, so that's all it's doing, and all it does is if you want to actually use it, which it takes actually time for it to train and learn each specific project that you're working on. So if you take that out of consideration, because that's going to take some time right there, it'll shave off a couple minutes of this time that you have to go back and forth copying, pasting architecture template code. But other than that, it's not doing complex logic for you. It's not doing any thinking. It literally just goes and searches for exactly what we're just talking about, this code that you're going to copy and paste anyway, and just paste it. So no, it's not even really AI. And that's as far as software development goes and having AI write code, that's basically the best public tool that's available to do that. So no.
No, I'm also as a follow-up question, I'm curious because I've heard some developers say that they think that way down the line, eventually we won't really write code anymore, and it'll just be because even if you think about, for example, if you think about a lot of the networking, standing up your infrastructure stuff, now we have the cloud, and you can just hit one button and it'll you can have your provisions already created and it'll spin it up on a template exactly like that. And it takes away a lot of the manual stuff. And even in the software development space, we do have stuff like Wix and stuff like that, where you can build sites, or WordPress, right? Where you can build sites without knowing anything about code at all. And you can have modules and all this stuff, and you can build really production ready commercial sites without even writing a single line of code. Do you ever think there'll be a point where that will scale out to most of the development jobs that are out there now, where it's just, you don't even really write code?
The whole no code movement, it's a pretty cool thing, I mean, we have one guy at Guava that we have that just basically, he does maybe 5% of it is actually hand code, and that's only in these instances where he has to. But so yeah, that's good stuff and all. But if you actually know how to code, there's some things that you can't do with that stuff right now, at least, that you can't just use the template generator, or you can't just use the software that's doing it for you. So like, if you actually want to do complex stuff, you have to open it up, get behind it, and do actual code. So coding, even in that scenario right now, is still more valuable than if you just didn't know how to do it. I'm not too ignorant to like think like in the future, that's not going to get better and better. But the problem with like stuff like that is that the stuff that's making the code, well, that's code too. Somebody had to write that. And one thing that I was always taught when I was starting to learn code from day one was that software is only as smart as the person that programmed it. And sometimes, a lot of times people make a lot of mistakes, right? Or it's not perfect. So, I don't know exactly what that would look like, but if it does get better, hopefully it's just going to be these tools that we're going to use to incorporate, that we can use to incorporate. Hopefully they don't like, and make these things end up being like, oh, it's going to cost you like $1 million a year to use. Hopefully it's free, and it's tools that we can use to make software development better and easier.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have this idea that like, oh, that one day they're just going to wake up and programming is going to be dead as a job. Even if, like, hypothetically, even if eventually it went to all, like, using those kind of solutions instead of writing code, it wouldn't just happen overnight. For one thing, it would be like, first you would incorporate that, you would write your own code and just use that to kind of template stuff and things like that. And you would integrate it slowly over time. It wouldn't just be like, all of a sudden programming is dead, right? So what I'm hearing from you is, if something like that were to happen, it's probably going to be so far out that you're kind of at this point just saying like, what if, and playing the what if game. And I think the reality is that software development as we know it right now, if you learn this today, it's going to be a very valuable skill set for you. That's not really a real concern to worry about if AI is going to take over everything. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yeah, and another way to look at it is like this. In the past, like, so the way that we write code now, we have like all these like magical tools that can do a lot of heavy lifting for us, right? For example, like literally something as small that people take for granted as like a standard library for a programming language. We used to not have like that. We used to not have like IntelliSense, where things would just finish typing a word for you, right?
Yeah.
That didn't exist, and even before that, there was programming languages like just C and C++ that you yourself had to do the memory allocation and deallocation with. And now we have these modern languages that like Python, like you can basically type in English like, hey dummy, do this. So those people that did know that stuff, though, before we had all this modern technology to do a lot of the heavy lifting for us, they actually now, even today, are more valuable than they were before, because there is still a large niche software that's like genre software that's all over the place with almost everything that requires people who are really good at stuff like C and C++.
Yes.
And dude, 99% of developers can't write C or C++ worth anything. So, even today they're valuable. So you take all that and you take that in consideration. And if maybe, Python becomes, it becomes like the boomer programming language in 20 years, but there's going to be all this massive infrastructure that's written on Python, and you're going to be extra valuable if you actually know how to do that compared to the people that are new and don't.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because I'm glad you brought up C and C++ because I think a lot of people don't realize that that's actually one of the most popular programming languages today. And the reason for it is it's actually everywhere, and it's going to always, I think, pretty much always be everywhere. I mean, some people are like, oh, Rust will replace it. We'll see if that ever happens or not. But I think that it's just so widespread. And the reason for it is it's a very specific language at what it does. It's very good at the niche thing that it does, and that is that it is very good on low-level devices. If you're trying to program, for example, if you're trying to build an engine of some sort, for example, a lot of people that are watching this video right now, they're probably using the Chrome browser. Well, the V8 engine is written in C++. And even, we're talking about Python and these other languages. Most of those languages were built using C++. So it is if you trace it, if you kind of follow it back, it eventually, before it goes to like ones and zeros and assembly and all that, it usually C or C++ is, what was used to build that thing. So even if there is all of this, just click and drag type of programming stuff going on eventually, like Josh said earlier, someone has to build that. And, if you're talking about programming stuff for like microcontrollers and all the stuff they, use in like factories, IoT devices, right? That's all, none of that isn't written in Python or anything like that. It's all C, C++. And because, it's for a lot of reasons really, but when you have very strict memory limitations, then it's actually beneficial to manage your own memory because you don't have like a garbage collector that's like using a bunch of, taking up a bunch of space. So it's very niche, but that's always pretty much going to be around. And even if we're not talking C and C++, right, there's some language that's going to be used to build that automation that you're using, right? So yeah, I think that's a really good point as well. Just tying everything back to the, the inflation stuff that's going on right now. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've definitely been noticing. I was talking to my dad on the phone recently, and I was just like, yeah, I'm really noticing it now in terms of like when I go and buy something, I'm like, wow, that's a lot more expensive than it used to be. But the nice thing I will say, at least for me, and I'm sure for you as well, it's more of a, wow, this kind of sucks that I have to pay this much money. I don't feel like my life is, I can't afford stuff, or like I'm like, unable to, like, I'm struggling to survive or anything like that, right? And I think a lot of that has to do with, like we're saying, having a hard skill. But I do know a lot of people that are more affected by it than me. So that's just something I want to point out as well. If you are like, depending on where you guys are working right now, I know a lot of people that watch this channel, they're looking to get into the tech space. Maybe it's pen testing, red teaming, maybe it's software development. Maybe you're not sure yet. And you're just trying to experiment with both of them, see what you like better. I will say, personally that yeah, I felt pretty shielded so far in the inflation stuff. Now, hopefully we don't turn into Zimbabwe, then it might be a different story. But I mean, right now, yeah, it is going pretty well for me. I mean, what would you say on all that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel it because when I go to a store or when I go get like a lunch at a place that's like a typical place I go get lunch at, and it like last year it was $20 for the same exact thing, that's $30 this year. Or when I go to the car wash and it used to be $25, now it's $35. Like I noticed that, but it's not killing me, to pay 10 extra bucks for my car to get washed and, fill up my gas tank. The gas tank's more than $10, but food and all that kind of stuff, it's not killing me. And, one thing that we have done, so like at Guava, we just got a project today. We got it yesterday, but they signed with us today.
And can you briefly explain to people what Guava is? Because I'm sure most people don't know.
Oh yeah. So Guava is my software company that me and about 4 other guys started together, and we focus on Web3, but we pretty much do anything, specifically web development. So we got a project signed today, and like normally, dude, we would probably be charging like $1,000 to $2,000 more for this project, but I know that like people are having a hard time out there, and so we basically gave them like a $1,000 to $2,000 break, right? But even with that $1,000 to $2,000 break, like we're all still going to be a lot more content. We'll be full for a couple of months just from this one project, and it's not going to kill us to do that. So even if we had to like raise our rates, which we haven't had to, because what we do is still valuable enough. If we had to raise our rates, we'd be fine. But even now, it's not killing us or anything.
Yeah, for sure. But another thing that I really wanted to talk about here is that, for the people that are watching and say they're into cryptocurrency or maybe they're into real estate or whatever, are there ways that they can, kind of couple these two skill sets together, programming and cryptocurrency and things like that? Because that's what I always like to take as a strategy, when I was learning programming, obviously I said, okay, I'm learning these things in programming now. How can I take that into, the current job that I was working, which was IT at the time? I was like, how can I automate what I do? How can I, really make this worth my time by, building something I would actually use? And then when I got into the pen testing space, I always looked to see like, okay, how can I take what I learned from code and use that in pen testing? So would you say there's any way for people that are, big into crypto or, real estate or some kind of investment vehicle to take their programming skills and bring that in as well?
Yeah. So first off, I think investing is like a pretty logical thing to do. Although people become illogical and irrational around it sometimes. But I think, the act of, let's just say not like short-term trading, but even that too, if you're going off like TA or something and you're looking at charts, I mean, that's about as technical as it can get. It's why it's called TA or technical analysis. But let's say you're like talking about like long-term investing and you're like, okay, to me, it makes logical sense that this house in this area is probably going to be worth maybe, maybe a little bit more, if not a lot more than it is today, because you're just using logic. Like, okay, it's in a great neighborhood. There's no crime in this city. It's in good condition, blah, 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 blah. So I think just being a logical thinker, period, which is going to require you to think logically in tech if you're in tech. I think that helps you a lot. But man, I mean, the first people that ever got into crypto were like a bunch of devs and nerds, because crypto is what? It's code, So I think, especially when it comes to like smart contract compatible layer ones, and where you can actually go and read like the contract and like see and understand how these things are working, and if you're interacting with the stuff, your software brain's going off. You're like, okay, I didn't know that's probably doing that and this and that. I think that helps a lot. But dude, one thing I wanted to say earlier that I forgot to mention is, like, we're talking about the people that went full-time crypto. It's cool that if you can do that, but like what I was thinking, especially 2 years ago when the market was starting to pop off, like the last thing I wanted to do was quit my jobs, because that's just giving me more money to put into it.
Yeah.
Right. It makes no sense. Like if you're just leaving food on the table. So altogether, man, I don't think that. I don't think that being a software developer will hurt you, or being IT in any way, shape, or form, especially with crypto. It's only going to benefit you. And if you can just take that same logical thinking over into your investments, then the more the merrier.
Yeah, really combining skill sets, interesting skill sets like that is a great way to really excel at anything, I think, right? Because, even if you take like software development, for example, right? I mean, there's not a lot of people, but at the same time, there are a lot of people, if you know what I mean, that know how to program, right? But not many people know how to program and are plumbers, they don't have knowledge of plumbing and programming. So maybe you can take something you learned from that and bring it into that to automate something that no one else is automating. Bringing those skill sets together can really help just make you just even stronger, I would say, for sure. And yeah, that was a really good point as well that you mentioned with just when you learn how to code, you end up, it's a really good logic exercise to do. It gets you thinking in a different way. And that can have so many benefits outside of just writing code, like Josh was mentioning as well. I think it would make you a better pen tester for sure. Pen testing is going to also teach you some of that logical thinking as well. But yeah, I think that like everyone watching here could benefit just from the mindset of programming, especially. I would definitely say, regardless of if you guys know you want to get into tech for sure, then there is a lot of crossover from what I've noticed with what Josh does as a software developer and what we do as pen testers for sure. Even down to the mindset of, just that logical thinking as well. And also there is some creativity side. I think a lot of people try to say like, oh, it's only logic and, tech is only logic. But I kind of push back on that. I think that definitely speaking from the pen test side, right, from the hacker side, right, that the whole way that hacking came about was it was creative solutions to problems that people never thought of, doing something a certain way. And even if you look on the development side, all the time they're being creative with code, right? For example, a programmer might be working with some serious hardware, back in the day, maybe they're working with some serious hardware limitations. They've done some really crafty things as well. And they're all the time, they're coming up with unique ways to solve problems with code. So, real world problems as well. So there is definitely that element of creativity involved, I would say. So even if you're watching this right now and you're like, I don't know, I really want to get into tech. It seems like such a great career field, but I've always been like the more creative type, not the super logical side. I don't know. I would say like, you might actually succeed really well here if it's something you're interested in, because you're going to bring that different perspective, because most people in this field are that super logical and like traditionally like terrible with people, and they don't have that other side. So I think that could be of value. I mean, what would you say?
Yeah, man, it's funny because that's one of the first things I tell people in my academy when we're given like the day one presentation. But you have to be logical when you're thinking about doing things that are like trues or falses, right? Yeses or nos. But there is a million ways to skin a cat, and like there is a million ways to write the same algorithm. Some might be better in this way, and some might be better than that way. But that alone, that basically requires you to be creative in how you're thinking and doing this stuff. And another thing too to consider is even if you're sitting there and you're like, okay, well maybe not like that kind of creative. I'm talking about like art. I'm thinking about artsy creative. Yeah. Even on like the front end, like if you're doing web development on the front end, you have to actually be artistically creative sometimes. So
yeah, just like Pablo, right? I mean, he's like is super on the artistic side, but he is a really good programmer too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's something I've always said to people is that regardless whether you're a left brain person or a right brain person, the thing that I enjoy, one of the things that I enjoy the most about it is that like I'm a left brain person, and it challenges the right side of my brain.
Mm-hmm.
So stuff never gets like, it never gets sour, it never gets stale. And the same thing is going to be for the inverse. If you're a right brain person and like you're gonna be doing great with your right brain stuff as far as code, but your left brain is going to challenge your left brain too. So like it challenges both sides of your brain. Both different types of people end up doing really good in it. So
yeah, for sure. And that challenge is what keeps me interested in the field, just having all these challenges, always having more things to learn and things like that. I've definitely worked in those jobs before where it's like you learn everything that you need to know about the job in like a year, and then it's just the same stuff over and over. Personally, I hate that. If you guys are in that situation, if you do decide to come over to, software development or, cybersecurity, it's definitely not like that at all. Well, yeah, awesome. Did you have anything you'd like to say to the audience before we close out?
Not really, other than just, maybe instead of just investing in like crypto or the stock market or real estate, invest in yourself and like get yourself the ability to have something that can generate money indefinitely for the rest of your life. That way you're not just dependent off of your investments.
Yeah, that's so true. If you invest in yourself, no one can take that away from you, right? So that's what's going to allow you to thrive in any market, right? Just tying everything back. So yeah, awesome, Josh. Well, we will be in touch, and until next time, man.